not to be moved at the sight of a steam engine rushing along the lines, thrusting its way from one town to another, carrying families, luggage, mail, and above all, the impossible to describe excitement of just being inside its swift, swaying carriages. The pungent smells, the white plumes of smoke, and the sounds, which now sadly seldom echo through the countryside. Stalwarts of the past, like the George V, can still be seen and heard, but they've given way now to the diesels. The men who drive them have all the old skills, but the romance, for that's what it is fading as the years pass. The real impetus for steam began early in the last century. It was perhaps the logical conclusion to the first ideas that came to the men of Babylon and Assyria thousands of years ago, when they realized that tracks gouged out by chariots kept them to a fixed path. But the dream had to wait until George Stephenson, son of a Northumberland colliery fireman, improved on earlier designs and in 1825 brought the world's first passenger steam railway into operation. His son Robert became thereafter the first recorded millionaire engineer. A Cornish mining expert, Richard Trevithick, had been the first to apply high-pressure steam to drive an engine 20 years before, but the Stephensons had seen the possibilities of transporting passengers. It was one of the most important developments in man's technical history. Travel at speed, and all for a penny a mile. Few people then could have seen that the early locomotive would lead to years of bitter dispute between the canal owners and their profitable cargo business and the newly born and suspect steam transport. All too often, this led to railway companies purchasing bankrupt canals, running them after a fashion, and then laying railway lines on the empty ditches that were left. There was no denying steam. Swiftly, the lines were laid up and down the country. It brought an ease of travel that no one had believed possible. No more coach and horses. No more gusty, squally showers to chill the traveller's bones. What must it have been like to travel by the railway when it was new? The stations proved more orderly than the coaching offices, with all their bustle and noise. You didn't have to tip the guard, unlike the coachman, and if you booked a seat, it was firmly set aside for you.
Hurry along, please. Hurry along, please.
The railwaymen took their responsibilities seriously. If a lady travelled unaccompanied, according to etiquette books of more than 100 years ago, she was advised to travel in a carriage with others of her own sex, especially those of matronly appearance and with family surroundings. Nowadays, lines like the Dart Valley in southwest England are run purely by enthusiasts and preservationists in an effort to recreate a typical country branch line. But to get back to the great heroes of steam, names that have become household words, it was the George V that captured the hearts and minds of thousands of people in the late 20s. It's the nearest locomotive left that continues the theme of mainline steam. Now she's based in Hereford, and on her occasional runs, the men on the footplate take their meals in a way both simple and effective. The engine, as much as the food, is a tasty morsel. On her occasional forays from Hereford, she might run to Newport, and whenever this happens, there's seldom an empty seat on board. She is a symbol of the essential pride that craftsmen may take in their jobs. When she was first shown in London, thousands turned out to see the most powerful locomotive in Britain. And within weeks, she crossed the Atlantic by boat to let America see this monarch of the Great Western. The occasion was the centenary of the famous Baltimore and Ohio line. The clean lines and workmanship astounded the Americans. It's reported that the vice president of a major American railroad company told his senior designers that they should take a course of art lectures before they tried to put any more of their ideas on paper. This trip, so many years ago, did much to demonstrate the best in British railway engineering. And she's still pulling the crowds in. As the railway had developed towards the end of the last century, the passengers, for the most part, were unaware of the continual drive by the engineers to build better, faster, and more comfortable trains. The mother, saying farewell to her son, took it for granted that the journey would be safe and uneventful. And there was more to come, this time from America. George Mortimer Pullman began designing sleeping cars as resoundingly plush as his name. After all, America is a vast continent, and if you wanted to travel across it, it might just as well be in comfort and style. For generations to come, Pullman laid down the principles of efficient, often sumptuous, long-distance travel. By 1865, he'd launched the prototype Pullman Sleeper, and 10 years later, he was building them for the Midland Railway in England. For day travel, there was also the parlour car, furnished like an hotel on wheels. An added luxury was to have a smoking car attached. Right up to the late 20s, the private railroad car in America was the outward and visible sign of a private and substantial bank balance. It was the ultimate expression of wealth and success. In a democracy which formed its own kind of class distinction, coupled with affluence, the Pullman car had all the allure that characterized the titles and landowning rights of the old world. The idea was quickly taken up, of course, by the European nobility. Queen Victoria and the Russian, French, and Austrian emperors all had elegant cars built for them. But Queen Victoria's, although as lavish in all other respects, had no bathroom. When Edward VII, then Prince of Wales, visited America in 1868, he arrived from Canada aboard a car specially built for him by the Grand Trunk Railway. And when he became king, he had the most impressive private railway car for his travels. Pullman cars were just part of the interplay of ideas that crisscrossed the Atlantic. Unlike many Europeans in the mid-19th century, the Americans were quick to see the future of steam locomotion. Their enthusiasm, as always, transformed their country. It was the ideal way to open up the West. After the Civil War in 1865, the words United States took on a special meaning. Within 4 years, the Union Pacific and Central Pacific lines met in a rare moment of railway history. The American continent was linked coast to coast by rail. The way had been hard and steep, with engineers improvising constantly, but they beat the wilderness. One of the iron ways that literally grew up with America is the Strasburg Railroad, 4.5 miles of preserved track on its way to some of Pennsylvania's most beautiful countryside. Short run takes it through the heart of one of the most fertile regions of America, and the land of the God-fearing Amish people. They have no time themselves for steam and automobiles, and their values belong to a time much closer to the founding of the line in 1832. Saved by local railroad enthusiasts in 1959, the line now carries thousands of tourists each year on a brief trip through history. And one of the rare sights is the hand firing, as the pincer-like fire doors open to receive the coal. Way down south in Arkansas, other enthusiasts saved a steam line, the Reeder Line, which, although it only dated from 1925, was revived as a working railroad. Its 23 miles of single track was built to connect the Missouri Pacific Line with the refinery at a nearby oil field. As it carried oil, timber, and of course passengers, it swayed through small communities with colourful names like Cumming Springs, Goose Ankle, and Possum Trot. In fact, to its friends, it was known as the Possum Trot Line. At times, the train passed through a green wilderness, forested by oak, maple, and cypress trees. It's a wetland, and over 100 trestles bridge the line, crossing the many creeks and pools of still water. There are other steam locomotives still running in America, but few of them have had the fortune to track through such beauty. At Illinois in the Midwest, this steam train, her days of glory long gone, now hauls scrap for the Northwestern Wire and Steel Company. It still does a worthwhile job, but the diesels have taken over now, marching along the nation's trunk lines. At times, it's almost as if the train is carrying the very iron lines that other steam trains sped over long ago. But it's really just so much scrap, destined perhaps to build the diesel engines of the future, and possibly automobiles too. However, it's good to know that steam still lives on in some lands, to remind people of what it was like to travel once upon a train.